G'day guys, Tim here again. Just want to talk you through and walk you through the vocal chain that I have. So this is what I use when I'm making sweepers and promos, my general approach to what I'm trying to do. And obviously it's trying to deliver a good quality, good consistent vocal that's heard above all the production elements, the music bed, and whatever else might be involved. So here's the dry track on its own. This is a sweeper that I'm making for Craigstube.
When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun.
Okay, so that's just straight out of the K2 and straight into the door. Okay, obviously via a preamp. So what I first want to do is just get rid of any mud in the bottom end and just clean it up. So what I've got here is just a stock plugin from Reaper, which is a high pass filter. So lots of different ways to look at that. The cool thing about this one is you actually get to see visually as well, other than just using your ears, what's actually going on in the background and what frequencies you're cutting out. So let's just work through that, So let's cut out the bottom end, but leave enough of the vocal behind so that it still sounds normal.
When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun.
There we go. So it gives it the impression of tightening up that vocal because there's just not a lot of low frequency content, which is going to be filled by the production elements anyway. Okay, so that we just get rid of them, don't need them at all. Okay, the next thing I do is go to a EQ. So this is called the Marg. So this is a pretty cool, nifty EQ that I've used for a very long time and have a lot of fun with it. So there's lots of cool things you can do on this one. So let's do an A-B comparison with what we had. So taking the first step and then adding this in and see what it gives you.
When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun.
There we go, just get rid of that S, it's just a little bit too intense there. So what I've done is just added some air gain, which is one of the cool things about the Marg, and that's up to 6 on that one. A little bit of cut, like 2.5 is really going to help cut the vocal through this guitar track that's going on underneath here, which can't play on YouTube, but it's in there, and this vocal is really going to have to push through it to keep the intensity and to keep it all going. So the next track, or next portion of what I do here is take it into Vocal Writer. Now Vocal Writer is really cool because it does compression and expansion. So it's literally like grabbing that signal and pulling it down when it's needed for once it's hit the threshold or the target as they call it here, and then it will expand it, so it'll push the fader up so that it will actually bring up the volume of that track to help make it more consistent. So it's compressing and expanding at the same time. So I'll give you an idea here.
When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this.
So see it working? So it's lifting up the volume up to the threshold and then also bringing it back down if it needs to, once it's gone past that threshold. So there's your compression. Then I'll typically take it to another compressor again. And this one here, any compressor will be fine, and I run this one harder. The other one wasn't run so hard. This one here, I'll run it and kind of push whatever signal has already been compressed and expanded into this compressor to take it another step further. So I've got this set at a 4:1 ratio. Here's our threshold up here, our compensation, which is our output gain. And there's some parallel compression going on in this as well. So there's actually some dry signal being sent back in. So let's have a listen. We'll turn it off and then turn it on.
When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done.
Okay, so you can see how that's just lifted the whole signal up further. So the next thing that I do is I'll then take it to a limiter. So what we really want to do is take that signal and push it into the ceiling. So that's going to lift everything up even further. So this is a plugin which comes with Reaper. So that's the standard version, and there's the more pretty version. So there's our threshold there, and over here our ceiling. So we want to make sure that's not clipping, so it's just below 0. and this is what they call a soft clip, so it's kind of like a saturation, I believe, on this particular one, and it's set for limiting. So here we go without, and then we'll so it's bypassing the out, and then we'll bring it back in.
When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun.
So on again.
When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun.
So you can see the intensity of the whole vocal. You can hear even the smaller nuances in the voice, and the intensity there come out because you're actually lifting everything right up. So if we put this in a little bit more context, I have to keep that track out there, but let's put it into some context so you can have a little bit of a listen.
When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all is said and done, this is where we have the fun. When all
So there's some big things going on in there, but you've got to imagine in here that there's a pretty gritty guitar tone coming through, and that vocal's really got to cut through it. So another reason why I use that kind of walkie-talkie effect here.
This is where we have the fun. WCRAIG.
So there you go. So the idea behind it is to, in this case, get that vocal to cut through. There's times when I don't need as much edge off the vocal, and that's fine. It's going to sound a little bit more natural. So that there is my vocal chain. So again, I recommend cutting out the bottom end, obviously sweetening it with your EQ, and then try using one compressor and a limiter, and then two compressors and a limiter, and just see what that actually does to your vocal. And of course, you just got to make sure it all sounds good with your ear and not sort of over the top and crazy. So I hope that helps, guys. In the meantime, have some great mixes, and leave some comments if you like, and feel free to subscribe to the channel. We'll have more of these videos coming up soon. Cheers.